Hello and welcome to Soft Serve. My name is Mads Williams and I am a guide to female sensual energy. Today's episode is all about solo sex and why it needs a serious rebrand. But let me take you back to the weekend and the reason for this episode in the first place. What's so juicy about having a weekly podcast is that I can really let my life show me what is relevant or what the podcast wants to be on. It's less about what's happening in my head and more about what's happening in my reality. That's how I like to do a lot of this work, to be shown. So I had this experience where I was posting something on my Instagram, a reel I had made, and I just really clearly looked at this version of me and thought, oh, dang, that girl needs to get laid. And what I love is that the work I do with sexual energy means that that doesn't have to come from outside of me. That has shifted so much where that is now something I can absolutely take into my own hands. But it wasn't always the case. You know, I was someone who was really desperate to do this alongside others. There are so many chapters of my single life where I was looking for a lover, whether that was conscious lover or just someone who felt compatible and who I was deeply attracted to. But the shift in going further into the work means that actually that isn't something I even think about now. So the joy comes from genuine attraction or genuinely life revealing someone as opposed to me going searching. But this was definitely something I experienced a lot in my move to the UK, in my post breakup years. It feels like a really big part of my story that I was in a 9-year relationship for most of my 20s. And that's fucking cool for a multiple of reasons. And it's interesting because that's a lot of access to sex or a lot of not having sex, you know, depending on the place the relationship was in or even where I was in my own life. You know, I think that sexual energy is always such a reflection of your actual turn on with life, whether you like your work, whether you like your friends, whether you like where you live, whether you're excited by the person you are. I find unless you're using it in a really numbing way, for me, sex has become this mirror of my life force and my engagement in my own reality. So 9 years to experience a total plethora of moods and moments and connection with sex, with myself, with my ex-boyfriend. So when I got into my 30s, into my single life, into London, natural that you would then think that that drive for sex or desire for sex needs to be met by someone else. And as I'm saying that, I'm really realizing that it wasn't even sex. It was like a thirst for experience and being in on life and being awake and feeling that turned on element that I just talk about a lot. So often what we're craving is just a waking up within ourselves, really ramping up the parts of us that feel deeply connected to the parts of us we deeply love being. You know, it's like why I love doing inner child work, because when I'm dancing or trampolining or making mermaid cell phones on the beach, I feel so alive. That is really what I was craving, aliveness. And so this cool thing happened where I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts. My therapist ghosted me, and Vogue and Joanne were joking about not knowing where their G spot was. I remember thinking, that's fucked because I'm not sure I know where mine is either. And from there, I set it as my New Year's resolution for the next year to have a G spot orgasm and learn all about it. And what I love about that is the universe went, okay. And so actually, I was sent a lover and I was sent this opportunity to really go in on my sexual energy and have this huge, expansive, creative up level that literally is the catalyst for why I sit here today speaking about this topic with full obsession. This experience was with someone who wasn't living where I was living. So, what that meant was there was so much time in this up level of sexual energy where I was by myself, where I was activating this new part of my anatomy that I'd only really just discovered. And it gave me this permission to really experiment because it was so linked to sharing. It was so linked to someone else's life force. It was so linked to almost like having a running buddy. So you're like, all right, well, let's keep going. And in that, I, for the first time since the early parts of my 9-year relationship, was living with sexual energy being a potent part of my everyday life for about 3 or 4 months. And once you've experienced that level and it gets taken away or it goes really quickly, you work out very fast that you want to replace it, that you want to make sure that you can make that a sustainable part of your life. I think what's interesting about, we talk so much about like the honeymoon phase and is it sustainable and can you keep this up with a person when you're in a, I want to say 9 to 5 relationship, but you know what I mean. And that's why I feel so lucky about this because the fact that it went away, the fact that that connection concluded meant that I was now missing a lover and therefore had to find a foundation on my own. And maybe that doesn't sound like super sexy work, but honestly, the more and more I go into it and the more and more I eavesdrop on couples' relationships or their experiences, the more I realize that the solo sex work doesn't stop when you fall in love. It doesn't stop when you go into partnership. If anything, it is an amazing opportunity to double down and have it as an access point to your own center, your own pleasure, and your own power. I think it's very important as women when we are inbuilt nurturers and so fucking equipped to take care of others and intuitively sense others' needs that actually we're topping up our powerhouse from within. We're topping up this access to the divine. We're topping up our magnetism that isn't based on somebody else's validation. When you have a woman deeply aware of her own beauty and her own talent and her own contribution to the world that's coming from her core essence and beaming out, there is nothing more sexy, magnetic, powerful, life-giving to the world and to your partner. This is the thing I love about sexual energy and doing the work. It's that your partner only benefits. This is not you cheating on your partner. This is you strengthening that connection to your body and yourself so that you get to come back to the relationship even more equipped to open, to surrender, to receive pleasure, to understand pleasure, to give pleasure. When you're thriving in your sexual energy, that extension of celebrating someone's body, celebrating someone else's pleasure, that all gets really ramped up. It's this idea of sharing the adoration because you are so adoring of your own being. So why would you not gift that love? I think about that notion of we can only pour from a full cup. It really goes both ways with sexual energy. But why do I think it needs a revolution perhaps in your life? There are many reasons. One, rebranding or revolutionizing the way you experience solo sex or think about solo sex puts you in a position to so deeply enjoy your life from an actual aligned place. So, this is particularly speaking to my single gals. When I was in my quote unquote doing it for the experience. It was very much that, oh, do it for the plot, do it because you'll have something to talk about, do it from your head. None of that is fucking truth. None of that is actually putting you in connection with the right people. And if anything, it's actually shutting your body down. It's shutting down your pleasure. It's shutting down your arousal for sure. It's shutting down your trust with yourself and therefore making sex something that isn't safe. So actually, this idea of sex with yourself really came to me in this need to shift my language because of this discernment I have around being intimate with people that actually tracks back to being a teenager when I really think about it. What would happen was there are quite a few moments where I would go a year without having sex with someone. And again, let's just take any shame or judgment out. I know lots of people who, that would be considered quite short. Maybe they've had multiple years. I know other people where that feels like the most shocking statistic they've ever heard. I know people who are in long-term relationships who are having less sex than that. So it's actually not about, is it right? Is it wrong? It's very much about, is it right for you? And so for me, I wasn't looking for people who weren't going to meet my desire or my level of attraction. Especially being gut led, it just wasn't in my ethos to sleep with someone just because. Beyond my first year in London, of course, but it's important to get the growing pains out of the way. But what changed for me was my language. So instead of saying that it's been this many months, it's been this many days, it's been this many hours, and really focusing on this unnecessary timeline and pressure and narrative and story that, quite frankly, is bullshit and was kind of just feeding everyone else's interest in my life. What I started saying to myself and my friends was that I had been having sex with myself. So I changed this notion that, oh, I haven't had sex for a year to, I actually had sex yesterday. And that also gave me this real power in what my sexual practice looked like. Before that time, my sex probably would be what I would have called like masturbation or a quick clit and run. It was very much dopamine surface level, you know, I find it easy to come clitorally. So it was like, oh, I'll bang out as many as I can be bothered until I feel like I've hit a certain number. And even after that, I had that feeling where you're still craving. Even in my sexual experiences, I'd finish sleeping with men and it would feel like, oh, I could still come, I could still come, I could still come. Like that itch was like not actually being scratched. And so changing the way I talked about the experience, changing it to, okay, I had sex today, or I'm having sex tonight, or I've actually got a date with myself to have sex, has completely shifted how I feel about being a sexual being. It's also changed how I show up to that time with myself. And in that, what has changed is my ability to actually scratch that itch. So the deeper you go vaginally, what happens is you denumb the vagina and you get way more sensitive. So therefore, you're experiencing way more pleasure. And therefore, things like that sugar hit that you used to be addicted to with the clit becomes actually almost irrelevant. The clit can be a really beautiful place to warm up because it really lubricates the vagina. So therefore, especially if you're having penetration, I'm not suggesting that we skip the clit. But I do find that when you're doing solo work, if you can put down the clit, it's really fucking hard. It's actually taken me 2 years, like literally 2 years. And I think every time I've self-pleasured in 2 years, I've been like, okay, is this the day that I don't touch my clit? Is this the day? And only recently, because I've been really showing up with myself and actually activating the internal parts of my yoni, has it been getting so fucking good that I couldn't care less if I went near my clitoris or not. It's funny because that might actually not sound that appealing to you if you are someone who loves clitoral orgasms. But I promise once you're in, you're like, dang, I can't believe I've stayed out so long. And I've had experiences with men where I would come clitorally to begin with. And then because of the depth we could go to with their stamina and with the time we were having sex and the fact that I had denumbed my yoni, it didn't matter how we finished. It didn't matter if I didn't come in tandem with their orgasm, because actually what was being penetrated was something so much more satisfying and fulfilling and delicious. And I actually felt satiated after. And that's the kind of work I'm now getting to with my solo sex states. That's the kind of thing where, instead of being with myself pre-record, I'm like, oh, do you know what? I'm actually going to wait till after, because after I don't have any time constraints and I can put my music on and I can just go for as long as I want and literally have endless hours of sensation. So rebranding solo sex as possibly the most delicious solo activity you have access to is 100% something I am here to scream about. The other thing is what I was talking about in seeing that footage of me and thinking, oh, dang, that girl needs to get her some of that. The ripple effects are so fun. My friend talks about it as your antenna going up. I guess I'd call it magnetism, or that silent frequency that gets spat into the air that men are just like, oh, what's that? And absolutely do I find that often after I've had this really deep, intimate date with myself, things pop out of nowhere, whether that's people, whether that's money, whether that's jobs, whether that's anything. You do open this force field up that draws the things in that are for you. I've definitely gone on journeys where the kind of quote unquote pleasure practice was really about clearing emotions and processing things, and almost like, if I do this, I'll get that. If I do it, then I'll be so magnetic, I'll get what I want. But always that's the brain. And that's still coming from this cheeky intention that isn't actually pleasure for the sake of pleasure. And I've really found recently something shifted. Something has shifted where I'm just in this beautiful, fertile, aroused, sensual space. And the solo sex is actually been the best sex I've had with myself ever. And that is so exciting, because once you up level, you don't go back. That's changed. My cells are changed now. My yoni is awake in a way that it wasn't before. And so there's only upwards to go. There's only more pleasure to have. There's only more fine tuning. The more I'm tapped into my pleasure center, the more my yoni responds to whether something's the right decision, whether that's a man messaging me or do you want to move into this house. If it's something I'm excited about, she'll literally tingle. It's like she goes off like a little alarm to be like, yes, 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 you're excited. You're excited. You're turned on by this. This is again why I'm very passionate about sexual energy being cleaned up, being taken from out of the gutters and put on the pedestal that it deserves, because actually it's intuition. It's connecting you to fucking source. It is the most enlightened thing that you can bring into your life. It is this beautiful truth bomb that connects you to your body. It's that notion that if you're not wet, you're not ready for penetration. The body is so fucking clever in the way that we salivate when we're ready to eat so that our stomach knows it's got to prepare for receiving food. That is what the yoni does. That's why she's self-lubricating. That's why she's giving us all this gorgeous intel. Are you into that person or not? Do you want to have sex in this moment or not? Do you want to take that job opportunity? Do you want to move into that house? Do you want to do these things? Are you fucking turned on? So the more we are actually in our own essence and our own space with solo sex, the more we actually understand what that voice sounds like, what that fucking feels like, what it is to be in connection with our truth. So yeah, I get a bit preachy when it comes to solo sex, but I honestly just think it's so important and really vital for the health of a functioning relationship. There is no doubt in my mind that the next time I'm in a relationship, this won't be a deeply personal and important part of my schedule and my routine. Just as I've said it before, I would not ask my partner to go to the gym for me and expect that to impact my body and my muscles. So the same goes for this. The same goes for my time connecting to my internal turn on, my internal power, and my internal connection to divinity. Just one more time for the cheap seats at the back. Being able to give this to yourself really saves you from going down the wrong avenues with the people that aren't in alignment with your highest good. Because when we aren't needing anything, then we get to be incredibly discerning of what we choose and what we want. And so if actually what you want more than anything is a deeply loving partner or a deeply intimate, gorgeous, turned on love affair, that's where this work gets you one step closer. Not only are you activating your magnetism, but you're actually up leveling your frequency. You're connecting to a vibration so much higher. So automatically you're attracting in better partners. You're attracting people who are on the same wavelength, or dropping the low vibrational people that you were attracting in to trigger a wound that needed to be healed. I've done this so many times in the past, activated this rejection wound. So things felt really great and felt like I was deeply wanted, and then I would just get ditched. That was the feeling, and that was definitely the pattern that was repeating from my teenage years. And so when I started doing more and more and more of my own sexual practice, I started choosing myself. I started shifting my perspective from outwards to inwards. And over time, slowly but surely, that desire for love, that desire to be chosen, got replaced with this knowing that I had chosen myself. And from that, you're at this really clean, clear, confident, strong foundation to actually connect with people, not because you need them, but because you want them. And we can definitely convince ourselves of the latter and still be coming from wounding. So it's only in your experiences that you'll really start to notice where you're at on this spectrum. If you are being deeply honest with yourself and reflecting on the types of patterns popping up in your relationships, whether you're single or not, you might still find that these wounds pop up in your long-term relationships. Mine certainly did. My ex-boyfriend was a beautiful soul, but I never felt like I was fully chosen for my fully expressed, woo, crazy, audacious, wild woman self. And so actually, even in a gorgeous 9-year relationship, I chose to tap on that pain. I chose to shrink and feel small and feel like I couldn't be all that I wanted to. So these things can still be present even if you're in a loving relationship. And so actually taking the time to go, do you know what? I'm going to stop focusing so much on you as the problem, which I was so guilty of, or the relationship is the problem. And actually, I'm going to shift my energy to my solo sex and let me build from the inside up. Let me actually come to this place of understanding my own capabilities, not just sexually, but actually the more sexually charged you are, the more confidence you have, the more audacious you are, the more you are walking the walk towards the things that are actually, you know, your path, your dreams, that job that seemed crazy that you can't stop thinking about, whatever it is. So being able to do that from within is actually a gift back to your partner as well. There's a lot of talk about how we've expect our partners to give us everything. And don't get me wrong, I'm so here for this deeply obsessive relationship where, from a healthy perspective, we have this connection that deeply channels sexual energy and growth together. But I still understand from this time alone how much I can give myself, how much my girlfriends can give me, how much my community can give me, how much my family can give me. And so the expectation isn't that this one person will do everything for me. So again, like that gym analogy with my partner, I'm not going to expect then that sexually I can get everything from one person in my relationship. That doesn't mean to say I want to be in non-monogamous relationship, quite the opposite. But that is coming from me. That's coming from my relationship with me. And that's another thing that's really interesting that has even come out of my mouth, because my friend and I were talking about this idea of a lot of people who have been in relationships for a long time, or perhaps this up level in consciousness that's happening in the new paradigm. So you get a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not actually feeling fulfilled here. So maybe the progressive and exciting thing is to be going to sex parties or opening up our relationship and experiencing more. I want more. And what I think can happen there with that is that often we haven't even gone in with ourselves. We certainly haven't gone in with our partner. So there's so much of us that we're hiding. There's so much of us we haven't actually exposed. And a lot of that can be unconscious. A lot of that is coming from childhood where we didn't feel like it was safe to be seen, where we didn't know how to choose ourselves, where we didn't learn love and intimacy and proper connection and proper depth. Nothing of this is wrong. It's just really interesting to think about it consciously of, oh, what accountability can I take in this? Instead of running away from my situation, how can I run towards? And I think solo sex is a really powerful way to do that, because you start shifting your energy and you start shifting your, like I said, vibration. So the people close to you can't help but interact with you in a different way. That's what that frequency is doing. That's having those ripple effects. And often, in heterosexual relationships, that move towards the divine feminine and embodying not from this masculine way of, oh, clit hit, oh, outcome, 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 but the actual softening that comes from exploration and not having a time frame and going in and learning to squirt and releasing and letting out this like gorgeous cocktail of hormones and surrender. What tends to happen is the masculine meets it actually in the polarity that gets created. And if they don't, you might have your answer there as well. I think sometimes we can be afraid that we'll get the answer we don't want. But the alternative is being in a place that isn't comfortable, or that's the wrong word, being in a place that isn't fulfilling for your soul. I always talk about, like, it took me 3 years to actually leave my relationship because nothing was quote unquote wrong, but also it didn't feel right. It didn't feel alive. And I knew, actually, it's almost like my future self was tugging at me, calling, saying, like, you know how it feels. You have this remembering of what's waiting for you when you start actually allowing yourself to be yourself. So even within relationships, I find that the solo sex can either deeply save a relationship, or it can deeply thrust you out onto the path that's actually kind to both people and put you where you want to be. So maybe that one isn't the most fun thing to be confronted with, but I think that when we're talking about sexual energy and relationships, it's important to be realistic about how we're feeling, where we're satisfied, where we're dissatisfied, and taking 100% accountability. It's so easy to blame our problems on someone else. It used to be for me, oh, I don't have a lover, so that's why this is happening. Or, well, I have a boyfriend and, I'm not seeing his full potential or whatever. But actually, all that was a mirror of how I was feeling about my potential, because I was nowhere near even hitting the walls of what that was from me, what my soul wanted to do. So solo sex is this really great recentering focus back to truth, and it will ultimately put you closer to where you're supposed to be. It's almost like the chips will fall where they may, but from an aligned place because you're connecting back to source. You're connecting back to the greater plan and you're putting yourself in this high vibe place that your higher self is begging you to get to. So if you also feel like, oh God, that girl just really needs to get laid about yourself, I would invite you to set aside at least an hour, put on some music that you fucking love, have the goal of no goal, and let yourself explore your yoni like it's the most incredible landscape you've ever visited. See how it feels. See what comes from it. Just getting inquisitive to what actually exists beyond the clit and what exists when it's not for anyone else, when it's just for you, when you get to think about it as treating yourself. We're so quick to give ourselves a bit of chocolate or your favorite matcha. We love treating ourselves. What if we actually extend that to our body and our sexual practice? Ugh, this thing that just constantly exists between our legs. I almost can't believe it. I almost can't believe we have that much joy and beauty and deep pleasure right there all the fucking time. It's almost unbelievable we do anything else. But please, please, please consider getting sexy with yourself, reframing how you talk about solo sex, and prioritizing it to see what shifts in your life. So, thank you as always for joining me. If you want to report back, you know where my DMs are. I would love to hear it. And if you're someone who wants more tangible knowledge, tips about, okay, cool, this all sounds amazing, but how do you actually get there? How do you actually denumb? How do you actually bring upon squirting? How do you connect to divinity? How do you use this sexual energy more than just what you're sharing here? Well, then the summer portal of Soft Serve starts on the 14th of June. We are meeting once a week, and then you have access to exercises and videos and modules. Throughout the program, we do live coaching. So I am absolutely there to guide you and to work through the blocks that are coming up in your body, in your relationships, that are coming up from past experiences, that are dreams or goals you're wanting to achieve from your future. Soft serve isn't just sex. Soft serve is a full makeover that puts you in alignment with your magnetism, with your passions, with your purpose, with the places that your soul wants you to go. So, yes, Summer Portal begins in the middle of June, and I would be absolutely honored to have you there. You can find all that information at madswilliams.com. But in the meantime, pleasure away, beauties, and I can't wait to hear how you get on. Talk soon. Bye.